Hello all. So 2006 or 7 Mark 8 Civic anyway. Doing the rear wheel bearing on this. So how I've come across this, it's while you're driving it's making almost like a groaning sound kind of thing, and it's coming from the rear. It's quite annoying because it gets loud enough. So yeah, I've got the new bit ordered in, and I'm just going to go ahead and change it. It's quite straightforward, I believe. You just take the wheel off, take the caliper and the carrier off, take the disc off, and then behind that, I believe, should be the wheel bearing comes off just totally as a whole wheel hub assembly. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and do that. But just before I do that, I just wanted to see if we can show you the sound here, because I think it's coming. Not sure if you'll be able to pick it up on camera, but the sounds definitely there. So there's not so much the brakes rubbing, but like a groaning sound. So 19mm socket, breaker bar, take the wheel off, and then I believe it's going to be 14mm nuts holding on the caliper, and then not sure about the rest, so we'll take a look at that in a second. So turns out it's actually a 13mm nut just there on the back of the cut to hold the caliper in, and then it's probably going to be quite likely to be seized in, so it's a 15mm spanner just in there to hold that, and then you got the socket on the back over here, and then you use that kind of open it up, and that should take the caliper off. So the carrier's off. It was actually 14mm bolts on that. Didn't realise, but they were bloody tough. I had to use a breaker bar on one of them, the bottom one in the end. But yeah, the other thing I forgot to mention, these little screws here, they're good to take out when you've still got the caliper on, so you can put the handbrake on and literally just, I used a impact driver, so one of these you can hammer it on the end and it loosens up the screw. But yeah, otherwise they come off very, very difficult. I mean, you might not even be able to get them off without rounding them off without one of those, so bear that in mind. You can still hear, yeah, it's not nice. Well, this car needs a set of rear pads on this as well, so I could have done this at the same time, but that's a job for another day now. Nifty little trick you can perform here is we need to get this disc off, but mine's stuck on there. So what I've done, the two 13mm bolts for the for the caliper itself, I've screwed in here, and just literally, there you go, it's already come off. There you go, it's loose. Just literally by doing that, we've taken off the disc. Now I've actually already measured up my my new bearing, which is actually a complete wheel hub assembly, but I'll just show you again. So what I done, while the caliper and everything was still on, this is the first step. So I just kind of married up the bolts kind of thing, just like that, just to make sure everything fits. And you can actually see the back of the bearing is kind of like that. If you look in there, you can see it's pretty much the same. There's two different types of these. or on the Civics or the Hondas around this year. So just to avoid any kind of confusion. But yeah, looks like that's the one. Oh, and I can actually feel it as well. It's quite rough in there. So my battery actually died. So I've actually completed the job, but I wanted to show what I could, just using the old one here. So my wheel bearing was actually in 2 bits, so I'll just try and show you this now. Here's the old center nut, and just had a shower and everything, so this is not nice, but there's my old wheel bearing in 2 bits. And you can see all the dirt and everything in there. So I was quite lucky, to be honest. This was barely hanging on. There's a little seal that goes in over here. I'm guessing that has basically disintegrated, or that's gone. That's why this has failed. But basically, what you want to do is, so there's a little cap that goes on here. I'll just put a picture up of it now. And what you want to do is, to give you an idea, here's just over here, the cap, you can put in like a, I don't know, a screwdriver or something in there, or just something to kind of sort of start prying it apart. I had to use a hammer and a screwdriver just to get in there a little bit and then start prying it apart, and the cap comes off. And then the next step, once you've got that cap off, behind here there's this nut, which is a 32mm nut, and it should be anyway, dented in, just like you can see on this one here. That'll be dented in. You've got to stick, like, I don't know, I used a punch, so I put a punch in there, use that to kind of lever the nut up, and then yeah, literally you use a torque bar to take the nut off. This then pretty much hammers off. I used a hammer to get this off. My wheel bearing, as I said, this back part of it actually got stuck on there itself, so I had to pull that off. With the new one, I put some grease in here, and then yeah, it just slid back on, and then putting it back on. The only real thing that you've got to remember is when you put this 32mm nut back on, you want to make sure you do another little dent. It kind of locks it in place. Oh, and there's also the wheel speed sensor, which is at the top of the wheel, and it sits just where this kind of ring thing is. It's on the back behind the dust cover, and it's a 10mm nut which holds that in. And then what I did was, to be able to take it off, if you can imagine, the wheel speed sensor was in there, directly there. Rather than trying to pull it out from the other side, you can risk breaking it doing that. I just literally used an extension in from here, and I very lightly just tapped it back, and then by doing that, that allowed me to just take the wheel speed sensor out. It doesn't really interfere with this, but I just, when I was removing this, I didn't want to risk kind of breaking it or anything, so yeah, I just took that apart. I took that off, and that was pretty much it. Put some grease on the bearing, and put some grease over here where the disc is going to sit, obviously, and around here. And yeah, apart from that, that's pretty much it. So I hope that helps.